Chapter 3. The Land of Topsy-Turvy. "What is the topsy-turvy land like?" asked Joe, taking another pop biscuit. "Never been," said Moonface, "but I should think it's quite safe. Really, it's only just come, so it should be there for quite a while. We could just go up and then see if we like it, and then come back down again if we don't like it," said Silky. "Silky and Saucepan and I will come with you, if you like." Moonface turned to Saucepan, who was enjoying his fifth pop biscuit. "Saucepan, we're going up the ladder," he said. "Are you coming?" "Humming?" said Saucepan, looking all around as if he thought there might be some bees about. "No, I didn't hear any humming." "I said, are you coming?" said Moonface. "Oh, coming," said Saucepan. "Of course I'm coming." "Are we all going to take our lunch?" "Yes," said Moonface. Go to the curved door, and that opened a tiny cupboard. "I'll see what I've got. Tomatoes, plums, ginger snaps, lemonade. I'll bring them all." He put them into a basket, and then they all went out of the funny curved room and on to the big branch outside Moonface's house. Moonface shut his door. Joe led the way up to the top of the faraway tree. Then suddenly Rick gave a shout of astonishment. "Look!" he cried. "There's an enormous white cloud above and all around us. Isn't it mysterious?" Sure enough, a huge white cloud floated above them, but just nearby there was a hole right through the cloud. "That's where we go, up that hole," said Joe. "See that branch that goes up the hole? Come on." They all went up the last to the topmost branch of the faraway tree. It went up and up through the purple hole in the cloud. At the very end of the branch there was a little ladder. Joe climbed the ladder, and suddenly his head popped into the land of Topsy-Turvy. Then one by one they all followed. As soon as all 7 of them stood in this curious land, Rick was not as used to the strange lands as the others were. He stood and stared. His eyes were so wide that it really seemed as if they were going to drop out of his head. And indeed it was a strange sight he saw. Every house was upside down and stood on its chimney. The trees were upside down and their heads buried in the ground, and their roots in the air. And the people walked upside down too. "They are all walking on their hands and their legs are in the air," said Joe. "Goodness, what a peculiar thing to do." Everyone stared at the folk of the Topsy-Turvy land. They got along very quickly on their hands and often stopped to talk to one another, chatting busily. Some of them had been shopping and carried their baskets on their foot. "Let's go and peep inside a house and see what it's like all in Topsy-Turvy," said Joe. So they all set off to the nearest house. It looked really peculiar, standing on its chimney. No smoke came out of them, but smoke came out of a window near the top. "How do we get in?" said Beth. They watched, and the Topsy-Turvy man walked on his hands to the other house and jumped in at the nearest window, going up a ladder first. The children looked for a ladder that entered the house where they were. They soon found it. They went up to a window and peeped inside. "Gosh," said Joe, "everything really is upside down," he said. "The chairs and the tables and everything. How uncomfortable it must be." An old lady was inside the house. She was sitting upside down She was sitting upside down. An old lady was inside the house. She was sitting upside down in an upside-down chair and looked very uncomfortable. She was angry when she saw the children peeping in. She clapped her hands, and a tall man walked in on his hands, came running in from the next room. "Send those rude children away," shouted the old woman. The tall man hurried to the window on his hands, and the children quickly slid down the ladder because the man looked rather fierce. "This is a silly land," said Joe. "I vote we just have our lunch and then leave this place. I wonder why everything is topsy-turvy." "Oh, a spell was put on everything and everybody," said Moonface, and in an instant everything was topsy-turvy. Look, wouldn't that be a good place to sit and eat our lunch? It was under an oak tree, whose roots stood high in the air. Joe and Moonface set out the lunch, and it looked very good. "There was plenty for everybody," said Joe. "Have a sandwich, Silky. Saucepan, have a plum." "A crumb?" said Saucepan Man in surprise. "Is that all you can spare for me? Is a crumb?" "Plum, plum," said Moonface, pushing a ripe one into Saucepan Man's hands. "Oh, plum," said Moonface. "Well, why didn't you say so?" Everybody giggled. They all tucked into the good lunch. In the middle of it, Joe happened to look around, and he saw something surprising. It was a policeman coming, walking on his hands, of course. "Look what's coming," said Joe with a laugh. Everybody looked. Moonface went quite pale. "I don't like the look of him," he said. "Suppose he's come to lock us up for something. We couldn't get away down the ladder. We couldn't get away down the faraway tree before the land swung away from the top." The policeman came right up to the little crowd under the tree. "Why aren't you topsy-turvy?" he asked in a stern voice. Don't you know that the rule of this land is everything and everyone has to be upside down?" "Yes, but we don't belong to this silly land," said Joe. "And if you were sensible, you would make another rule saying that everybody must be the right way up. You've just no idea how silly you look, Mr. Policeman, walking on your hands." The policeman went red with anger. He took a shot of wand from his belt. "Silly you look, policeman, walking on your hands." The policeman went red with anger. He took out a short wand off his belt and tapped Joe on the head with it. "Topsy-turvy," he said. "Topsy-turvy." And Joe, to his horror, he had turned himself upside down at once. The others stood and stared at poor Joe, standing on his hands with his legs in the air. "Oh, fiddlesticks!" cried Joe. "I can't eat anything properly now because I need my hands to walk." The policeman, "Put me right again, please." "You are right now," said the policeman, and walked solemnly away on his hands. "Put Joe right now," asked Rick. So everyone tried to turn him over so that he was right the way up again, but as soon as his legs touched the ground, he turned back topsy-turvy again. He just could not help it, because he was under a spell. A group of topsy-turvy people came to watch and laughed loudly. "Now he belongs to topsy-turvy land," they cried. "He'll have to stay here with us. Never mind, young man, you'll soon get used to it." Take me back to the faraway tree, begged Joe, afraid that he really and truly might be made to stay in this peculiar land. Hurry! Everyone jumped to their feet. They held Joe along to where the hole was, to where the hole ran down through the cloud. He wasn't used to walking on his hands, and he kept falling over. He tried, and they tried to make him stand upright, but he couldn't. The spell wouldn't let him. It will be difficult to get him through the hole, said Rick. Look, there it is. I'd better go down first and see if I can help him. You others push him through as carefully as you can. He'll have to go down upside down, I'm afraid. It was very difficult to get Joe through the hole, because his hands and his head had to go first. Moonface held his legs to guide him. Rick held his shoulders as he came down the ladder so that he wouldn't fall. At last all 7 of them were through the hole in the cloud and were on the broad branch outside of Moonface's house. Joe held on to the branch with his hands. His legs were in the air. Moonface, Silky, can't you possibly take this spell away? He groaned. It's dreadful. Silky, what land is coming to the top of the faraway tree next? Asked Moonface. Have you heard? I think it's the land of spells, said Silky. It should come tomorrow, but I'm not really sure. Oh well, if it's the land of spells, we could easily get a spell from there to put Joe right, said Moonface, beaming. Joe, you must stay the night with me and wait for the land of spells to come tomorrow. The others can go home and tell your mother what has happened. All right, said Joe. I can't possibly climb up the tree again if I'm upside down, so I'll just have to wait here. Mother will never believe it, though, when the others tell her how I got this way and why I can't come home. Still, it can't be helped. They all went into Moonface's house. Joe stood on a chair upside down. The others sat about and talked. Rick was sorry for Joe, but he couldn't help feeling a bit excited. Goodness, if this is the sort of adventures that Joe, Beth and Franny had, what fun things were going to be. The others began telling him all about the adventures they'd had. Silky made some hot chocolate and went down the tree to fetch some more popcakes. When it was 5:30, Beth said they must go. Goodbye, Joe, she said. Don't be too unhappy. Pretend that you are a bat. They always sleep upside down, you know, and don't mind a bit. Come on, Rick. We're going down the slippery slip. Rick was excited. He took the red cushion that Moonface gave him and sat himself at the top of the slide. Beth gave him a push, and off he went, round and round inside of the enormous faraway tree, sitting safely on the cushion. What a way to get down the tree!